nerdy romantics. We are talking Fantastic Four. In fact, the full title is The Fantastic Four First Steps. I believe that's the full title. And we are talking all things Fantastic Four today. So, as usual, I just might spoil this. So, spoiler alert! All right, so let's get into this. This is the Nerdy Romantics Podcast, and I'm your host, Y.M. Nelson. All right, we have Perry and Marcie. How are y'all doing?
Doing pretty good. Doing pretty good.
Very good. Yes,
Awesome.
looking forward to talking about this.
Yeah.
Awesome sauce. Well, I will say I am looking forward to talking about this one as well. I am, and usually I say for everybody else, I'm going to ask everybody else how they found it, but I'll just say this. I watched it for the first time last night.
Okay.
Boy, it was really interesting. I will say that. Not only did I watch this for the first time last night, I went back because the numbers were getting to me and went back and watched a little bit of Multiverse of Madness so I could figure out which universe we were in. And of course did not at that time watch what I wanted to watch, which was actually the second, or as Perry told us on the Thunderbolts episode, the third installment of Fantastic Four, the Silver Surfer one, Rise of the Silver Surfer, which I wanted to watch that one before we got started with this discussion, but I didn't get a chance to. But for everyone else, how did y'all end up seeing this one in the theater? What did you go into it with? Obviously, Fantastic Four has some iterations, as we talked about on the Thunderbolts episode. So how did you find this one? How did you come into this one? Marcie, why don't you start it off for us?
So I think I first saw a trailer for it in some other movie I was in, and then I saw it, of course, at the end of Thunderbolts. You see the introduction. I have seen all of the other older iterations as well. And so I was interested in seeing what they were going to do this time because, as we talked about in Thunderbolts, it's been rebooted a few times. So I was interested to see what the new version was going to be like. So I came to it from a trailer and then in a post-credit scene, and then looking at it and thinking, oh, okay, well, we'll watch that. And so the family and I went back to see Fantastic Four after we had seen Thunderbolts.
Awesome. Perry, what about you? How did you first get into this, come across this, all this kind of stuff? What was your first impressions?
So I was really looking forward to this. I knew about, I follow all the Marvel news anyway, all the comic book movie news anyway. So I knew it was coming. I was very excited for it. I was a little bit curious about some of the casting choices. Like Pedro Pascal is great, but he wasn't my first choice for Reed Richards, but he ended up completely winning me over in the parts. I saw it in the theater, seen it at least two times since on VOD. And yeah, I had a great time. And I've seen all the Fantastic Four movies, even the 1994 Roger Corman produced one that was never officially released. So I've seen, and I've covered them all on my show too. In fact, we just recorded an episode on First Steps about a week ago, actually, 2 weeks ago, actually. So yeah, this is still fresh in my mind. I totally dug it. I thought it was a lot of fun.
Uh-huh.
Great. All right. Cool. So, all right. Dug it. Thought it was a lot of fun. Okay. I'm going to say I came into this thinking What is up with the whole Jetsons look?
Mm-hmm.
Because,
Mm-hmm.
because all the
That
other
60s vibe.
ones,
Yep. Yeah.
yeah, all the other ones gave us contemporary
Mm-hmm.
and very much there in that version. But then I thought maybe Earth 828 is in the Jetsons era. So what is everybody else thinking about this? Did it
Well,
turn you off? What was going on there with it for
so
y'all?
I was a bit like people have been talking about that they should do a Fantastic Four movie set in the 60s for at least a good decade. There's been that chatter online about how that should be the direction they go in. And I was never sold on that idea myself. I mean, I think it makes sense because they were created in 1960, so it does make sense that you would set it in that. And Jack Kirby, who did the art on Fantastic Four and created the art style for them, there was a lot. You could see that it's very much like 60s style, retro futuristic type of design work. So I could see why they wanted to do that, but I wasn't that sold on the idea at first, just because my whole thought going in was if you're going to set it in the Marvel universe, having the Fantastic Four in the 60s kind of breaks what's already been established with that universe. So I
Yeah.
didn't think that was a good idea. And then some people have said, well, they could just have them, be lost in time or something like that. But I didn't like the idea of you can do something like that with Captain Marvel because, she's just on Earth for a short time. There's not a whole lot of big public spectacle. But with the Fantastic Four, part of the appeal of them is that they are celebrity superheroes. So I felt like you'd be losing something if they had to be in secret in the 60s and then just come back in the modern era. So I didn't but so setting it in another universe is a way around that. And yeah, they won me over. I love the look of it. I love the retro 60s feel and everything. I thought they used the period setting in a way that made a lot of sense, similar to what X-Men First Class and X-Men Days of Future Past also did well. Also, Captain America: The First Avenger did very well. X-Men Dark Phoenix and X-Men Apocalypse did not do it very well. They just kind of it was
Mm-hmm.
ostensibly period pieces, but they didn't use that period at all. And Captain Marvel was kind of like in the middle of like they used it to some effect, but in other respects they kind of dropped the ball, and I felt so. But I thought of all the period piece superhero films we've seen so far, Fantastic Four is probably the one that nailed it the most.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Marcy, do you agree?
So I agree. I think it's because from the very beginning, it pulled you into that time and space and kept you there. And so I didn't think about it anymore once. I realized, okay, this is where we are. I didn't go back and look at the lore. I don't know what universe we're in. So I was able to fully immerse myself there because they did it well. And I think to Perry's point, they're consistent. To me, it's like seeing a Ninja Turtles movie, but them not doing the 90s well, or like not doing that New York vibe well, and it kind of throws you off because you're like, I know the story. But in this one, I think they did it so well. I did get the Jetsons vibe though. When I was looking at it, I was like, it kind of is. But they were able to take us there without it feeling kitschy, without it feeling overdone to me. And so once I realized, okay, this is the time and the place we're in, I think they moved through it so seamlessly that I was just immersed in the story they were telling. And it didn't feel like a crutch or a prop. It just felt like where we were supposed to be.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm gonna have to agree with that. I think that, yeah, when you're looking at it in the beginning or when you're looking at trailers, you're thinking, where in the world are they gonna go with this? What is
Hmm.
this? And if the first thing I thought was Jetsons. But then once you get into it, you're like, no, this is not the Jetsons. This is
Hmm.
its own thing and it works. And yeah, Perry, I would agree with Captain Marvel being kind of mid. But I think part of that is that they couldn't do with Captain Marvel that they can do here is like that 60s Jetsony era vibe has a very specific look. Whereas the 90s Captain Marvel, it kind of looks like today a little bit. It's too close in time periods. It's
It's
far
that
enough
too.
away, but it's also kind of close where it's like, okay, we got to show a blockbuster video and we got to show a phone booth and then we're good. And it's like, well, not exactly. We're not really good. Well,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
what were you gonna say? I cut you off.
No, I was gonna say the same thing. Yeah, it was basically in Captain Marvel, it was just basically used for scene dressing. I felt like they didn't really
Yeah.
do much with like making it feel like the 90s. I mean, we got the little background stuff. We got Stan Lee reading the Mallrats script and stuff like that, which is fun.
Right.
But like, my whole thing is if you're gonna set it to the 90s, use the 90s soundtrack at least. I mean, not even that.
That's
So I thought
true.
that was a little bit. It was just. I mean, I love Captain Marvel in general. Don't get me wrong, but I just felt like the '90s setting was kind of a missed opportunity there.
Yeah, yeah. Whereas here, I think they really did it. I mean, they really immersed themselves in this, and part of it is, you mentioned Jack Kirby. Part of it made me actually want to go and pull up some comics and see, does it look like this? You just get all, whatever. You get kind of, I don't know about it, but you kind of want to look and see, hey, where did this inspiration come from, kind of thing. But I think too, it separated this iteration of the Fantastic Four from all the other iterations that we've had. So you have to decide on your own if you like this one. It's not dependent on did you like the one with Jessica Alba? I mean, did you like that one? And does that one compare to this one? It's not a comparison. There's no comparison here, and I think part of it has to do with the fact that they set it in this way, so it feels like it's a totally different. It's not different characters, but you know what I'm saying. It's just a totally different vibe and a totally different movie that you have to just kind of judge on its own. Yeah, I will say though that even though the movie itself and the setting makes you feel that way, I had a tendency to, especially with the Mr. Fantastic character, the Reed Richards character that Pedro Pascal did. I started at first trying to compare, and maybe that was not the best thing to do to the other characters. And I wasn't sure because he was definitely coming off nerdy. He definitely was giving nerdy, but for me, he wasn't coming off as suave enough. But as the movie went on, I realized, okay, I don't need that. I like this iteration. What did y'all think of the character portrayals of? We'll just start off with the Mr. Fantastic one because I do have things to say about the thing. What is the thing's actual name?
Ben.
Ben Grimm.
Ben
Ben.
Grimm.
Okay. All right, thanks. Yeah, what do we think about the character portrayals here? And maybe even the casting here.
So, did
So
you want to go
I
character by character first, or do you want to talk
Yeah,
about
let's
all
start.
four of
Well,
them
let's
together?
just start
right.
with Pedro Pascal's character first, since he's the big one, because I do have some things to say about Ben. But yeah, let's start with him first.
I liked it. I mean, I did not find myself comparing, so I didn't think about him. But even if I did in the background, I kind of think of that. What's that guy? Ian, the guy with the last
Ian
name
Grufford.
Ian Grufford. I mean, I got a very similar vibe. I think he played the character, and I think he was believable in the places where I needed him to be believable. Thank you for that, Perry. I think he was believable in the places where I needed him to be believable. And I also think that he managed to do it without being Pedro Pascal. And I think that
Yeah.
I enjoyed that because I didn't see him as Pedro, and I didn't see him as any of the other characters I'd seen him in, and I think that was a good thing as well. I think he, I think he embodied the '60s kind of angst of family versus, work and my wife and how to do it all. And I mean, I think he embodied that pretty well. And so I enjoyed him in the role, and I didn't find myself comparing him to previous ones. I think especially since they had already made them adults and they didn't try to make them tweeners. And so I think it was easier to just go with it.
Yeah, I loved Pedro in this. Like I said, he wasn't my first choice for Reed, and I wasn't a fan of the mustache going into the trailers. When I talked about the mustache with another guest, he actually had a really good idea for Reed, and I think this is kind of like the way I think of it too, because in the comics, sometimes Reed is clean shaven, sometimes he has a full beard, and my guest Logan Crowley, he had this really good theory that I could see Reed being someone who just quickly shaves his whole face and then just goes on with his day, or I can see Reed being the guy who just lets a beard grow out because he doesn't have time for grooming. But he said I cannot see Reed being somebody who meticulously grooms a mustache. And I agreed with that. And I thought that so I didn't really like the idea of him with a mustache, but I still don't really like it. I'm still not very sold on it. But I don't. But he also said that what they were probably going for is Walt Disney and the whole Tomorrowland idea and all that kind of stuff. So once they
Ah,
said that, it really kind of clued me into it. I'm like, oh, okay, I can. It makes sense now.
yeah.
I still wish, we'd seen Pedro with a full beard as opposed to just the mustache, but it makes sense. I understand why they did it. I also did compare him to the other Reeds we had in the past. So Alex Hyde White in the 1994 film, Ian Grufford in the Tim Story films from the Fantastic Four and the Rise of the Silver Surfer, and also Miles Teller from the Josh Trank Fantastic Four movie, which was god awful. And he's definitely my favorite of the bunch. All four of them are probably my favorite incarnations we've seen of these characters. But Reed, I think I really loved Ian Grufford in the Tim Story films, but he brought a different kind of energy to it. He was a much more like overly enthusiastic type of nerdy
Hmm.
guy, whereas Pedro was much more subtle. He was much more subdued, and I thought
Yeah.
it made a lot of sense for the kind of for the approach they showed us with like the idea of him being somebody who always overthinks everything and is always like considering the worst possible
Hmm.
outcomes so that he can prevent it. I thought that was a very interesting character detail they brought for him,
Yeah.
and yeah, so I really dug what he brought to the role. And also just
Yeah.
like the idea that there's some things that he's bad at, right? I love the conversation with him and Ben when Ben's like, Stretch, you're not as smart as you think. And he's like,
Hmm.
yes, I am. He's like, well, how come? He's like, well, can you cook? And he's like, no, 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 that's a different kind of. He's trying to make excuses for it.
Yeah.
When when they tell them that they're pregnant, and Ben says to Reed, he's like, so I expect you to be freaking out by now. And Reed's like, I've actually got that scheduled for later because Reed Richards
Right.
is the kind
Right.
of guy who would schedule his freakouts. So I thought that was great.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Hmm.
That was great. I mean, you're right. He's a little bit more subtle in his nerdiness,
Hmm.
which is kind of cool. It's like subtle, but at the same time, he's like, I know I'm smart. I know I'm a genius. But then he's subtle about it in other ways. But you mentioned beard, and this is the first time that I've seen Ben the thing with a beard, a rock beard. I like
But I
it.
thought it was cute.
Yeah, it's so cute.
I did. I
Oh
thought it was
gosh.
cute.
And I love that actor, and I'm gonna mess up his name, Ebon Moss Baccarat. I think that's how he pronounces.
I think it's
How
Evan
is
Moss
it?
Backrack, I think, but I'm
Okay,
not sure.
thank you. I knew I was gonna mess it up, but yes, I love him as an actor. Of course, he's on The Bear, and he's really over the top. Everybody there is really over the top, anyway, in that show. And here he's smooth with it. But I love the sarcasm, but he's not like, harsh New Yorker sarcasm. It's just
Yeah.
like, dude. you know, it is just so cool. It's so
Yeah.
cool. And then, he has his little crush on the teacher lady. And, just I loved his character. I love this iteration of this character when I feel like in other versions, he comes off a little bit more as a side character instead of actually part of the four sometimes, to me.
Mhm.
And I think here, to me, he just stands out. But, my big standout is our Invisible Woman character. I mean, Mama Bear is something else there, especially in the end when, Galactic Galactus has
Yeah.
her baby.
Yeah.
She's like, yeah, no. You not about to take my kid.
Right. We gonna
Oh,
help you, but not at the expense of my child. Yes. Yes.
exactly. It's like, okay, she is not playing. And also, it was kind of, I believe they told the story in the beginning of their parents
Mm-hmm.
and Sue and I'm blanking
Johnny.
the
Johnny.
Flaming Torch, Johnny's
Mm-hmm.
parents in the beginning and about the mom. And I was kind of concerned when I saw that happen. But I'm like, oh, we got some stuff going on here. I mean, this is a very interesting story. And I know I'm totally getting off the character thing by saying that, but the whole story to me, it was really interesting and really neat. And I think it's going to be a good kind of because I think isn't Avengers Doomsday the actual next movie?
Yeah.
Or,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. So I think this was a good launching pad. And
Mm-hmm.
when you combine it with Thunderbolts, this is a good launching pad into Doomsday, right?
Yeah.
So, I got off of the whole character thing. So, y'all, what was y'all's favorite character out of here? A favorite, or was there a favorite? Did the ensemble just work here? And B, what did you think about the story? Marcy, how about you?
Oh, did I have a favorite? So I will always have a soft spot for Ben. And if anything, I think I had hoped to see a little bit more of his romance. There is one version where you meet her, like I feel like you get more of their relationship. So I always have a soft spot for him, but I think this ensemble and the way they presented all the characters together, I think worked so well that I didn't immediately have a favorite. Like if you ask me, I'll tell you I got a soft
Mhm.
spot for Ben, but I think that in this version their portrayal of Johnny and of Ben and Sue and Reed, I think they were more balanced than I think we've seen in some other versions. And so I think it was easier to see them as an ensemble cast because I feel like in some of the other ones, either it was a whole lot of Johnny or it was a whole lot, you know what I'm saying? But I think
Yeah.
sometimes there were, and so I think in this one they played into the story more cohesively, and so I
Yes.
didn't find myself thinking, "Ooh, I have a favorite," because I think that's I the story, the way they told it, couldn't have been told without all of them. And so I think that's a mark of this version that I feel like is pretty different. But I think I could say something great about all of the characters, and but I wish that I had seen more of Ben's evolution in that personal story because I think it's just a cool
Yeah.
story how he finds love after becoming that thing. But I also appreciate that they did not play into the bitterness that sometimes you see in other versions of the story
Yep.
and his anger about what happened. And so I do think that I liked his story and the play with the kids in the street and all of that and being part of the neighborhood. I think I liked that portrayal.
Yeah. Yeah. Perry, how about you? Any standout
Yeah.
favorites or
So I
yeah.
want to touch on each of them a little bit. So we talked about, Reed already, but as for Ben, the important thing to remember about Ben Grimm is that he's basically the stand-in for Jack Kirby, who co-created the Fantastic Four. Right. Jack Kirby, he's a Jewish kid from a working class background, grew up on the Lower East Side of Manhattan, and he was a roughneck. He was the kind of guy who would get into scrapes and all that, and he saw art as a way to escape the kind of the neighborhood that he was born into. And like you look at Ben Grimm and his, his penchant for cigars, which they don't have in this movie, they do have in the comics. But he's also Jewish. He's also from a working class neighborhood. All of that is, exactly Jack Kirby, right? And even his relationship here. So it was a different character in the other movies, and in the comics, and in
Mm-hmm.
the Tim Story films, and also in the Roger Corman one, he's involved with Alicia Masters, who's a blind sculptor,
Yep.
and she's the daughter of one of the Fantastic Four supervillains, Puppet Master. But and she also has some of the same ability as he does to bring like sculptures to life and things like that. But I think, but one of the things that they did here is this is not Alicia Masters. This
Mm-hmm.
is new character, and her name is Rachel Rosman, and Natasha Lyonne plays her. And the interesting thing about the last name Rosman is that Jack Kirby's wife was named Roz Goldstein. So I feel like they're pulling in
Wow.
another little nod to Kirby in that. Even the universe, the number of the universe, 828. Jack Kirby
Yeah,
was born on August
828.
28th. Yeah.
Yep.
So that was another neat little way to kind of like tie this back to Kirby. And I loved Michael Chiklis in the Tim Story films. I thought he
Yep.
was one of the standout performances in those films.
Agreed.
And they leaned in a lot in that into Ben's early depiction in the comics, where he very much hated the fact that he'd been transformed. He was very angry. You go back and you read some of those original
Mm-hmm.
Stan Lee Jack Kirby comics. It's like pretty much every issue Ben is making some comment about the fact that he's stuck in this rock form because of Reed. So it's like every single issue they keep bringing that back. They keep hammering on it. But as Ben evolved as a character, he came to terms with who he is. He came to accept, this is who I am. This is what I look like. I'm just going to deal with it and move on. And I really like that they chose that depiction of Ben for this movie, because they've been at this for 4 years now in this universe. So it makes sense that he would have evolved into the Ben Grimm that we see now in the modern iterations of the comics, where he is comfortable with who he is. And he was great. Yeah, his little sarcastic remarks, still being integrated into his old neighborhood, right? All of that was vintage Ben Grimm. So I loved all of that stuff. Vanessa Kirby, she may be the standout performance of the film. I think. I thought, again,
Yes.
I thought Jessica Alba
Yeah.
did the best she could have done with the material she was given, but so much of the reason why she was cast was because of sex appeal, and the director was terrible to her on set. Like every time she tried to show more emotion in something, like Tim Story would tell her, he's like, "Can't you do it prettier? Cry pretty, Jessica, cry pretty," and stuff like that. He was saying to her, and it was such a
Oh, how
miserable
awful.
experience for
Mm.
her. Yeah, it was such a miserable experience for her that she almost quit acting because of that. After Rise of the Silver Surfer, so she tried the best she could have with the material she was given. But you could have gotten Meryl Streep to play her in that role, and she couldn't have done a better job with the direction and the material she was given. So
Yeah.
I cut Jessica Alba a lot of slack in those movies. But here I felt like Vanessa Kirby, she is really kind of like the emotional heart of this team. And it's
Yeah.
just like Sue from the comics. She's exactly like Sue in the comics, where like you said, she's the mama bear. She's the one
Mm-hmm.
who is there to hold the team together. And also the one who's there to call Reed on his too. That's also important about her character.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Mhm.
all of that, I thought Vanessa Kirby did a great job of. So she was definitely my standout. And Joseph Quinn as Johnny. Again, I loved
Yeah.
Chris Evans in it, but they definitely overplayed the whole horn dog angle of his
Mm-hmm.
character in those movies, which, while it was fun, it definitely has not aged very well. And Joseph Quinn had said in the lead up to this movie that they were going to tone down that womanizing aspect of the character. And I think it worked for the best, because here we see a Johnny who is, yeah, he's still a hothead. Yes, he's still got a weakness for women and all that. But that's not the core of his character, right? And I love the fact that we see that he is intelligent himself, right? He's not a meathead or anything like that. He's not just a gearhead. He is somebody who is
Mhm.
very intelligent in his own right.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like a different kind of intelligence. So I loved everything they did with all four of them. And to Marcy's point too, I think that the whole cast really works together. So it is hard to say like, oh, this is my favorite. This is my favorite. As you were asking that question, Yvonne, I was thinking, I'm like, I kept going back. I kept arguing with myself in my head as I was thinking about how to
Right.
answer, because I like them all. And I think that their
Yeah.
interactions all together, they each get a little bit of time with each other. So we see how they work together. on a person to person level, and we also see how they work together as a quartet. And I thought it was wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
I'll echo with what Perry said about Johnny and his evolution as a character in this one, because they did show both his intelligence in solving and figuring it out, but also they showed a different kind of depth in his connection to the Silver Surfer and I think what he saw in her that he also recognized in himself. And so I am glad that they gave him some more to work with, because I think at this day and age they would have been tired if that's all we had gotten again. But I think you're right. I think the dynamic in the house, and I think the conversations between Johnny and Ben, and the conversations between Ben and this version of Ben and Reed, where they don't have all that angst, and Ben can support him in, and he recognizes when he's struggling. And I think that's something we didn't get to see in the other ones, because I think they were a bit more self-absorbed in
yeah,
in the other films, like very much into the. And so because we moved the story down, and they're settled in the what has happened to them, I do think it was refreshing to see these evolved characters as opposed to the ones we've seen before. I did miss the blind sculptress. I did miss getting to see the evolution of that relationship, and them falling in love with each other for something other than what they look like. And so I am hoping that we get to see a bit more of that as we see them in other films, just because I like the storyline a little bit, and I'd like to see more of Natasha Lyonne, because I love her. But yeah, if I missed anything, it was that. So I hope I get to see more of that.
yeah, yeah. I'm also gonna have to agree there with what y'all have said. I mean, I have the standout performances, but I agree that together, this cast did the ensemble, did the whole Fantastic Four part
Hmm.
correctly. They did it the best.
Hmm.
They worked together very well, and they bounced off of each other very well, you know. And I didn't say much about Johnny, but I do like Johnny here. I like his evolved. I'm with y'all on that. I like his evolved nature here. I was not a fan of Chris Evans as the Human Torch. I'm probably one of the few. I was
Blasphemy.
just, I know, right? It's just
I mean,
blasphemy.
he was what he was. I don't, I mean,
Yeah.
he did the best of what he had to.
Right, exactly. I think that's what that was. I think the ensemble probably would have worked better if they had this. They would have elevated their performances too, because i
Hmm.
just i just think that the whole story, like everything that's kind of going on here, is really working for them as well. So Perry, I'm gonna ask you this first. What did you think about the whole story idea? But also I want to ask, as a non-comic reader, I've already looked it up. I know that Galactus and the Celestial Tiamat, they're not the same thing. Okay. I know that. I got that. They're not the same thing. So I figured that part out. But the Silver Surfer role here, is this something from the comics? I was thrown off a little bit by having them paired together, and maybe it's because I just don't know the comics. So Harry, can you enlighten us a little bit on story and villains?
Yeah, so I just want to quickly piggyback about Alicia, the blind sculptress. I think they didn't want to use
Yeah,
her in this because they knew this universe was going to be ending and they're going to be bringing the Fantastic Four into the MCU. So I figured
yeah.
they're probably saving her for once they make the jump into the MCU proper.
Thank you, Perry, for giving me hope.
So yeah, I'm pretty yeah, I because she's such an integral
Yes.
part to Ben's character in the comics. They're married in the comics now.
Hmm.
So I don't see them leaving her out completely. I think it's just the case of we knew this was going to end. We wanted to give him something, right? Something there to, and so we decided to do it as a nod to Roz Kirby because Jack and Roz Kirby were they were like a power couple basically. So they wanted to give that nod to Roz Kirby. I think was what they were doing there.
Cool.
So all of that being said, I think as for the story goes, Yeah. So Galactus and the Silver Surfer are together. If you remember in the Rise of the Silver Surfer movie, Galactus was that cloud thing that attacked
Mm-hmm.
the Earth at the
Oh
end,
yeah.
Yeah.
which does come from the comics. It was from the Ultimate version of the Fantastic Four, which was kind of like a Ultimate Marvel was this thing where it was like this different universe where they were rebooting the characters for like the 2000s audience. So instead of being, a teenager in the 1960s, they did Peter Parker as a teenager in the early 2000s and things like that. And mixed results with that. And the Josh Trank Fantastic Four film was actually inspired a lot by the Ultimate version of the Fantastic Four. The Galactus Cloud thing that was also inspired by the Ultimate version of Galactus,
Okay.
which fans hated, right? Fans wanted the big curvy drawn Galactus like we see here. But yeah, Galactus is the devourer of worlds, and he's part of this universal balance. There was a one comic book that established that planets are like eggs for celestials, and so Galactus goes around and he consumes these worlds as a way of keeping the celestial population in check. Is kind of what his universal
Oh.
purpose is. And that was kind of, remember in Eternal, so that's kind of time they're bringing
Right.
that into Eternals
Yeah,
and all
that's
that.
why I thought they were the same. I was like, oh my gosh, are they the same thing? But they're not.
No,
But
they're not the same thing. In
yeah.
fact, Galactus is a holdover from, he's the last survivor of the universe that existed before this universe. So he predates the Big Bang and all that.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
and in the comics, it is Norrin Rad is the Silver Surfer. He basically, when Galactus comes to the planet of Zenla, which was Norrin Rad's planet, Norrin Rad, in order to save his planet and his people, volunteers to be Galactus's herald, and he gets imbued with the power cosmic, which transforms him into the Silver Surfer. And then in Galactus's first story, the Silver Surfer betrays Galactus to help save Earth, and then he becomes a superhero after that. In this version, they didn't go with Norrin Rad as the Silver Surfer. Instead, they went with his wife, Shalabal, who in some alternate reality, she also becomes a Silver Surfer as well. So since we're doing a different universe, I think they did this to use Shalabal as just a way to do something different, but also to differentiate it from the Rise of the Silver Surfer movie because you have a lot of the same beats here, right? You've
Yeah.
got the
Okay.
You've got Galactus coming. You've got Silver Surfer. You have Johnny in the Silver Surfer. Like you have, well, in that one it was Sue in the Silver Surfer. You know,
Right.
she basically helps turn him. Whereas in this one, it's Johnny who does a lot of that. And so I think all that was done just as a way to kind of differentiate it a little bit, which I thought was fine. I thought it worked well here. And Franklin in the comics, he again in one possible future, he actually does become Galactus. So they're kind of hinting at that possible future as well with that.
Oh yeah. I was wondering about that. I was like, is he gonna become Galactus? Oh my. You know, that's gonna be interesting. Okay, I can see it. Cool. So basically, what you're telling us is that this story is pretty much from the right from the comics. You
I mean,
know, it,
it's not a straight adaptation. None of the Marvel
yeah.
movies are really straight
No,
adaptations,
no.
but like with everything Marvel does, they take different elements of it. They take different ingredients from the comics. They kind of mix them all together and they kind of make their own dish out of that.
Yeah. This one is a good dish. Marcy, yeah, Marcy, what did you think about the story of it all and yeah,
Oh,
the
I
happenings?
love a good intergalactic bully who is showing up to eat everyone alive. I love it. I recognize it when I see it. It feels familiar, but I feel like the Silver Surfer in this one, especially, and the depth they gave her. And I did like Johnny's connection to her. You're right. In the other one, it was Suda was trying to make that connection. But I thought it worked well to move the story along, and it had some really good action in it. It gave us a good chance to see Johnny, and it gave us that sci-fi feel. It gave me old school Star Trek, and that's the vibe we were in when, you know what I'm saying? Like
Space
it gave
vibe.
me the nemesis from other places, and I enjoyed that. I think it worked well for the story. And then I think it was done well. And I think the Silver Surfer, that role and the story and how it moved the characters and the choices they had to make, I enjoyed it. I thought it was well done.
Yeah, yeah. I liked it a lot too. I just think that the whole evolution of their story. First off, this is another thing I liked about this. Also, kind of, it's not that it wasn't done in previous, but I'm just saying I like it here. I like how they just jump into their story and they give us, for the origin part, they just give us the backstory kind of in that whole Ed Sullivan like show, the Ted Gilbert.
Yep. Yep.
Feel like an Ed Sullivan kind of thing
It was
from back in the day. But yeah, I like how we didn't have to relive their origin story. I like how they brought that in. You know, they're superstars now. They're accepted now, and we're actually looking back onto,
right.
this is
It's
how
the
they
anniversary of it now, and
exactly.
we're gonna look back at it positively. I think that was a nod from the creators to us as well, to say, we know you already know the story. Let's not rehash it for the fifth time. It's a wise move to do that, because I did feel like I was watching something new and different, and I appreciated that, because
Yeah.
I did fear that we were going to have to sit through that to get to the good part. And thankfully, they just moved us right into, okay, cool. Everybody's got their powers. And I think that made it easier for me to immerse myself in the story, because I could just go on previously known information and just keep moving. So I appreciated that move forward and not having to watch it happen again.
We will continue this discussion on our next episode. Make sure you're subscribed to Nerdy Romantics Podcast wherever you get your podcasts, and visit nerdyromanticspodcast.com to subscribe to our newsletter, where you can get show notes directly in your inbox. Thank you for listening.